Victoria Sterling lived in a Manhattan penthouse that felt more like a golden prison. For 6 months, her wealthy husband Sebastian had become a stranger. Separate bedrooms, mysterious late-night calls, and cold silence replaced the fairy tale. Marriage, she thought she had. Then he returned with a shocking demand that would shatter her world forever. Hello, beautiful souls? Tonight's story will take you on a journey where hearts are tested and destinies collide. Let's dig in. The champagne flute trembled in Victoria Sterling's manicured fingers as she stood alone on the marble terrace of their Manhattan penthouse. Below, the city pulsed with life, while above, stars struggled to pierce through the urban haze. The November wind carried the scent of rain and distant car exhaust, a stark contrast to the sterile perfection of the home behind her. 6 months. That's how long Sebastian had been a ghost in their marriage, a shadow that shared her address but nothing else. The man who once traced poetry on her skin with gentle fingertips now communicated through his assistant's carefully worded emails. Their penthouse had become a museum of memories, each room echoing with the laughter that once filled these walls. Victoria's reflection stared back at her from the floor-to-ceiling windows. Designer dress, perfect makeup, hollow eyes. She looked like every other wealthy wife in Manhattan, playing her part in society's grand theater. But beneath the polished surface, something was breaking. The sound of a key turning in the lock made her heart leap despite herself. Sebastian's footsteps echoed across the marble foyer, each step measured and deliberate. She didn't turn around. When he appeared in the doorway, his reflection joining hers in the glass. "We need to talk," he said, his voice carrying none of the warmth she remembered. Victoria set down her champagne, the crystal singing a soft note against the stone railing. When she finally turned to face him, Sebastian's blue eyes held a cold calculation that made her stomach twist. "About what?" Sebastian stepped closer, and she caught the familiar scent of his cologne mixed with something else. Something that smelled like another woman's perfume. "I want you to have my baby, Victoria." The words hit her like a physical blow. After months of silence, of separate bedrooms, of feeling invisible in her own home, this was what he wanted to discuss. Not their crumbling marriage, not the love they'd lost. A baby. "You disappeared for 6 months, she whispered, her voice barely audible above the wind. 6 months, Sebastian. And this is what you come back to ask me?" His jaw tightened, but his expression remained eerily calm. "It's time we discussed our future. Our future." Victoria laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. "What future? You can barely stand to be in the same room as me." "That's not true, isn't it?" She took a step toward him, searching his face for any trace of the man she'd married. "When was the last time you looked at me? Really looked at me? When was the last time we had a conversation that lasted longer than 5 minutes?" Sebastian's silence was answer enough. The rain began to fall, droplets catching the light from inside their penthouse like scattered diamonds. Victoria rapped, her arms around herself, suddenly feeling exposed despite her elegant dress. "Why now?" she asked. "Why a baby now?" Something flickered behind Sebastian's eyes, there and gone so quickly she almost missed it. Fear? But of what? "Because it's what married couples do," he said, but the words sounded rehearsed. Victoria stared at him, this stranger wearing her husband's face. "No," she said quietly, "that's not why. There's something else, something you're not telling me." The city lights blurred through her tears as she realized the truth that had been staring at her for months. This wasn't about love or family or their future together. This was about something else entirely. And as Sebastian's phone buzzed in his pocket, the screen lighting up with a name she couldn't quite see, Victoria Sterling made a decision that would change everything. Dawn crept through the penthouse windows like a reluctant witness, casting long shadows across the marble floors where Victoria had spent the night pacing. Her bare feet were silent against the cold stone as she moved through rooms that felt more like a mausoleum than a home. Sebastian had left before sunrise, as had become his custom, but this time Victoria was ready for him, her brother Oliver. Arrived within an hour of her call, his journalist's instincts sharp, even at 7 in the morning. He found her in Sebastian's study, sitting in the leather chair that still held the faint scent of her husband's cologne. "You look terrible," Oliver said, setting down a bag of coffee and pastries that she wouldn't touch. "Thank you for that honest assessment," Victoria replied, but there was no humor in her voice. Oliver studied her face, noting the dark circles under her eyes and the way her hand shook slightly as she reached for the coffee. "Tell me everything." So she did. The months of silence, the separate bedrooms, the mysterious phone calls that echoed through their home like secrets in the dark. And finally, Sebastian's cold demand for a baby after treating her like a stranger. In her own marriage, "This isn't normal behavior, Victoria," Oliver said when she finished. "Something's driving this change." "No?" Victoria stood and moved to Sebastian's desk, running her fingers along its polished surface. "I've been thinking about it all night. The timing, the way he said it. It wasn't about wanting a family. Then what was it about?" Before Victoria could answer, she noticed something that made her breath catch. A business card, partially hidden, beneath a stack of financial documents. She pulled it free and stared at the embossed letters. "Harrison and Associates. Family Law." Oliver leaned over her shoulder to read the card. "Divorce lawyers. High-end ones." Victoria's legs suddenly felt weak. She sank back into the chair, the business card trembling in her hands. "He's planning to leave me? But then why ask for a baby?" The question hung in the air like smoke, acrid and suffocating. Victoria closed her eyes, trying to piece together a puzzle that made no sense. Unless... What if it's not about the baby itself? She whispered, "What if it's about what having a baby would mean legally?" Oliver's expression darkened as understanding dawned. "Custody, child support. If you have his child, I become financially dependent on him for the next 18 years. Victoria's voice was barely audible. "Even after a divorce, I'd be tied to him forever." The sound of footsteps in the hallway made them both freeze. Victoria quickly slid the business card into her pocket as the study door opened. Mrs. Sterling. Their housekeeper, Mrs. Patterson, appeared in the doorway. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's someone here to see you." "Who?" "Catherine Vale. She says it's urgent." Victoria's blood turned to ice. Sebastian's mother had never visited their home unannounced. The elegant woman who had made her disapproval of Victoria clear from their first meeting was the last person she wanted to see right now. "Show her to the living room," Victoria managed. "Tell her I'll be right there." Mrs. Patterson nodded and disappeared, leaving Victoria alone with Oliver and a growing sense of dread. "This can't be a coincidence," Oliver said. Victoria nodded, her mind racing. She knows something. About Sebastian, about the divorce lawyer, about whatever's really going on. "What are you going to do?" Victoria stood and smoothed her dress, calling on every lesson in composure her mother had ever taught her. "I'm going to find out what Catherine Vale wants. And I'm going to discover exactly what my husband has been planning." The living room with Oliver close behind, each step echoing with the weight of a marriage built on lies. But as she reached for the door handle, Victoria realized something that chilled her to the bone. If Sebastian was planning to divorce her, and his mother was here to deliver some message or ultimatum, then the baby wasn't about trapping her financially. The baby was about something far more sinister. And as Catherine Vale's cold voice drifted through the door, discussing family obligations and bloodlines, Victoria understood that she was about to discover a truth that would shatter everything she thought. She knew about the man she married. Catherine Vale sat in Victoria's living room like a queen holding court. Her silver hair perfectly coiffed and her steel-gray eyes missing nothing. She wore a black wool coat that probably cost more than most people's cars, and her fingers adorned with family rings dating back generations drummed impatiently against her designer handbag. "Victoria," Catherine said without preamble, "we need to discuss your marriage." Victoria settled onto the sofa across from her mother-in-law, every nerve on edge. Oliver had positioned himself near the window, ostensibly admiring the view but actually recording everything on his phone. "What about my marriage?" Catherine's smile was sharp as glass. "Sebastian has made certain decisions about his future. Decisions that affect the Vale family legacy, such as, he's chosen to honor his obligations to his bloodline," Catherine said, her voice carrying the weight of old money and older expectations. The Vale name must continue. Victoria felt the blood drain from her face. You're talking about the baby? I'm talking about an heir. Catherine leaned forward slightly. Sebastian's grandfather's will is quite specific, you see. The bulk of the Vale fortune, including the family trust and the controlling interest, in Vale Industries can only be inherited by a direct male descendant who produces an heir by his 30th birthday. The room spun around Victoria. Sebastian's 30th birthday was in 3 months, and if he doesn't, the fortune passes to his cousin Marcus, who already has 2 sons. Catherine's smile widened. Sebastian has been aware of this stipulation since he was 18. It's why he married you, dear. You have excellent breeding potential. The words hit Victoria like a physical assault. She gripped the arm of the sofa, fighting waves of nausea as the truth crashed over her. He married me to be a broodmare, she whispered. Such a crude way to put it, Catherine said with distaste. You married into one of New York's oldest families? You should be grateful for the honor. Grateful? Victoria's voice rose, fury finally overtaking shock. Grateful to be lied to? Grateful to be used? You've lived in luxury for 2 years. You've wanted for nothing. Except love. Except honesty. Except a husband who saw me as a human being instead of a means to an inheritance. Catherine waved her hand dismissively. Love is a luxury for people without real responsibilities. Sebastian has obligations to his family, to his heritage. Victoria stood abruptly, pacing to the window where Oliver stood frozen with rage on her behalf. Outside, the city continued its relentless pace, oblivious to the destruction happening. In her living room? The phone calls? Victoria said suddenly. The late nights? The mysterious conversations? Who is he talking to? Something flickered in Catherine's eyes. I'm sure I don't know what you mean. But Victoria knew a lie when she heard one. It's another woman, isn't it? Someone he actually cares about. The silence stretched between them like a blade. Her name is Elena, Catherine said finally, her voice cold as winter. Elena Reeves. She's from an appropriate family, with the right connections and breeding. Sebastian has been seeing her for 8 months. The betrayal cut deeper than Victoria. Had imagined possible 8 months? While she'd been wondering what was wrong with their marriage, Sebastian had been building a new life with someone else. Then why not divorce me and marry her? Because Elena can't have children, Catherine said with brutal efficiency. A riding accident when she was 16 damaged her reproductive system. She's perfect for Sebastian in every way except the one that matters for the family legacy. Victoria's knees gave out and she sank onto the window seat. The full scope of Sebastian's plan became clear with sickening clarity. He wants me to have his baby, then he'll divorce me and marry her, she said. He gets his inheritance, his true love, and I get nothing but 18 years of child support payments. We'll get generous alimony, Catherine said, as if that made everything acceptable, enough to maintain a comfortable lifestyle, and my child will be raised as a Vale, with all the privileges that entails. Victoria looked at this woman who had orchestrated the destruction of her life with the same casual efficiency she might plan a dinner party. You helped him plan this? Helped him understand his priorities? You're both monsters. Catherine stood, smoothing her coat with practiced elegance. We're both realists, dear. Sebastian will get what he needs, Elena will get what she wants, and you'll be compensated for your contribution to the family legacy. As Catherine reached the door, she paused. Oh, and Victoria. Sebastian will be returning home tonight to discuss the artificial insemination process. He thought it would be more clinical that way. Less emotional complications. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like a death knell. Victoria stared at the space where Catherine had been sitting, her mind reeling. Artificial insemination. They didn't even want her to experience the intimacy of conception with her own husband. Victoria, Oliver said gently, moving toward her. He never loved me, she whispered. Not once, not ever. I was just a vessel for his heir. But as the initial shock began to fade, something else took its place. Something harder and more dangerous than grief. Sebastian Vale thought he could use her, discard her, and move on with his perfect life. He thought she would submit quietly to his clinical plan and fade into the background like a good little broodmare. He was about to discover just how wrong he was, because Victoria Sterling was done being a victim in her own life. She was about to turn the tables on everyone who had underestimated her. The Manhattan skyline glittered like broken promises. Through the penthouse windows as Victoria prepared for war, she had spent the afternoon with Oliver, planning her counterattack with the precision of a general mapping a battlefield. By evening, everything was in place. Sebastian arrived home at 8 o'clock sharp, his footsteps echoing through the marble foyer with their usual measured cadence. Victoria waited in the living room, wearing the black dress he had once said made her look like a goddess. Tonight she would be a different kind of deity, one with vengeance in her heart. "Victoria, Sebastian," said as he entered the room. He looked tired, older somehow, as if maintaining his web of lies was finally taking its toll. "I trust my mother spoke with you today." She did. Victoria's voice was steady, betraying none of the fury that burned beneath her composed exterior. She explained everything: the inheritance, the timeline, your practical approach to our situation. Something like relief flickered across Sebastian's features. "Then you understand why this is necessary." "I understand perfectly." Victoria stood and moved to the bar cart, pouring 2 glasses of his favorite. "Scotch, you need an heir by your 30th birthday, or you lose everything to your cousin Marcus. Family fortune has been building for generations. I can't let it slip away because of sentiment." Victoria handed him the scotch, their fingers brushing briefly. Once, that touch would have sent electricity through her entire body. Now, it felt like touching ice. "And Alina," Victoria said, watching his face carefully. "Your mother mentioned." "Alina?" Sebastian's composure cracked slightly. "What about her? She can't give you children, but you love her." Victoria sipped her scotch, savoring the burn. "It must be difficult, having to choose between love and duty." Alina understands the situation, I'm sure she does. Victoria set down her glass and moved closer to Sebastian. "Just as I understand mine." Sebastian's blue eyes searched her face, looking for the pain or anger he expected to find. Instead, Victoria gave him a smile that could have cut glass. "I'll do it," she said simply. "You'll do what?" "I'll give you your heir. But I have conditions." Sebastian straightened, his business instincts kicking in. "What kind of conditions?" "First, no artificial insemination. If you want a child from me, you'll conceive it the natural way." "Victoria, that's not necessary. A clinical approach would be simpler for everyone." "For everyone, or for your guilty conscience?" Victoria stepped closer until they were almost touching. "If you want to use my body to secure your inheritance, you'll have to face what that actually means." Sebastian's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Fine. What else?" "Second, I want $50 million placed in an account in my name. Immediately. $50 million. Sebastian's voice rose in shock. "That's excessive, is it? You're asking me to carry your child for 9 months, give birth, and then hand over my baby so you can play house with your mistress. I think $50 million is quite reasonable compensation for destroying my life." The silence stretched between them, thick with tension and unspoken threats. "And if I refuse?" Victoria's smile widened. "Then you can explain to your family why you chose to give up billions of dollars rather than pay a fair price for an heir. I'm sure your cousin Marcus will be thrilled." Sebastian drained his scotch in one gulp, the alcohol burning away his last pretense of civility. "You've changed. You've taught me to be practical." He moved to the window, staring out at the city. That would soon belong to him, if he played his cards right. "The $50 million will be transferred tomorrow." "Wonderful." Victoria joined him at the window, her reflection ghost-like in the glass. "There's just one more thing." "What now?" "I want to meet her, Elena. I want to look the woman in the eye who's going to raise my child." Sebastian spun to face her, his composure finally shattering completely. "Absolutely not. Why?" "If she's going to be my child's stepmother, don't I have the right to know what kind of person she is?" "Victoria, this is madness. This is business, Sebastian. Isn't that what you've made this entire marriage? A business transaction?" Victoria's voice hardened. "I want to meet Alina tomorrow night. Dinner at La Bernardine, 8 o'clock. She'll never agree to it. Then I suppose you'll have to convince her. After all, you're very good at convincing women to do things that aren't in their best interests." Sebastian stared at her for a long moment, as if seeing a stranger wearing his wife's face. "What happened to you?" You did, Victoria said simply. You and your mother and your precious family legacy. You wanted to turn me into a commodity, Sebastian? Congratulations, you succeeded. She walked toward the doorway, pausing to deliver her final blow. Oh, and Sebastian, you might want to call Marcus tonight. Let him know he shouldn't get too comfortable with the idea of inheriting the Vale fortune. She climbed the stairs. To her lonely bedroom, Victoria allowed herself a small smile. Sebastian thought he was the only one capable of playing games with people's lives. Tomorrow night, he would discover just how wrong he was. Because Victoria Sterling had spent 2 years learning from a master manipulator. And now, to turn his own weapons against him, the only question was whether Sebastian would survive the lesson. She was about to teach him about the price of betrayal. La Bernardine hummed with the quiet elegance of Manhattan's elite as Victoria arrived precisely. At 8 o'clock, she wore white, a deliberate choice that made her look ethereal against the restaurant's sophisticated ambiance. At a corner table, Sebastian sat with a woman who could only be Alina. Alina Reeves was everything Victoria had expected and feared. Elegant without effort, beautiful in an understated way that spoke of good breeding and better genetics. Her auburn hair caught the candlelight like fire, and when she looked up at Victoria's approach, her green eyes held a mixture of guilt and defiance. Victoria Sebastian stood awkwardly. This is Alina, the woman who's been sleeping with. My husband for 8 months, Victoria said pleasantly, taking her seat. How lovely to finally meet you. Elena's cheeks flushed. Victoria, I want you to know that I never intended for things to go this far. Victoria signaled the waiter for wine. Where you never intended to get caught and never intended to fall. In love with a married man? The honesty in Elena's voice was disarming. Victoria studied her carefully, noting the way Elena's hands trembled slightly, the way her eyes kept darting to Sebastian with genuine affection and pain. But you did fall in love with him. Yes. And you knew about the inheritance? About why he married me? Elena's silence was answer enough. Victoria leaned back in her chair, wine glass balanced delicately in her fingers. Tell me, Alina, what happens after I give Sebastian his heir? Do you plan to help raise my child while pretending I never existed? It's not that simple, isn't it? Victoria's voice remained conversational, but ice ran beneath each word. You get the man you love, I get pushed aside with a generous settlement, my baby gets raised by the woman who helped destroy his parents' marriage. Seems simple enough. Sebastian reached across the table toward Elena's hand, a gesture so tender it made Victoria's chest tighten with unexpected pain. Despite everything, seeing him show another woman the affection he'd never given her still hurt. What do you want from us, Victoria? Sebastian asked. Victoria set down her wine glass and smiled. I want to offer you both a choice. What kind of choice? Option 1. We proceed as planned. Have your baby, you get your inheritance, you divorce me and marry Alina. Everyone gets what they want, except for the child who grows up knowing his mother was paid to conceive him and then discarded. Alina winced at the harsh words, but Victoria continued relentlessly. Option 2. I disappear. Tonight I file for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences, and I leave New York forever. You lose your inheritance, but you get to be with the woman you actually love without the messy complication of a baby conceived through manipulation. The silence at their table was deafening. You would do that? Alina whispered. You would give up $50 million? Money can't fix what's been broken here, Victoria said, surprising herself with the truth of it. And I won't bring a child into this world as part of a business transaction. Sebastian stared at her as if she'd grown a second head. You can't be serious. You'd throw away everything out of spite. Not spite, Sebastian. Self-respect. Victoria reached into her purse and withdrew a manila envelope, placing it on the table between them. Divorce papers already signed. All you have to do is file them. Alina looked between Victoria and Sebastian, her face pale with shock. But the inheritance will go to Marcus and his sons, who were born out of love instead of greed. Stood, smoothing her white dress. The Vale family legacy will continue, just not through Sebastian. Victoria, wait. Elena's voice stopped her. Why are you doing this? Why give up so much? Victoria turned back to face the woman who had unknowingly saved her from a loveless life. Because I finally realized something tonight, watching the two of you together. I've never seen Sebastian look at anyone the way he looks at you. Not even me. Not even in the beginning. Her voice softened. You two actually love each other. Real love. Not the performance I've been living with for 2 years. Tears spilled down Elena's cheeks. I'm so sorry for all of it. Don't be sorry for falling in love, Victoria said gently. Be sorry that it took so long for all of us to be honest about what we really wanted. Sebastian remained frozen in his chair, the weight of his choices crushing down on him. The company, everything my family built, will survive under Marcus's leadership. Or it won't, and maybe that's what it deserves. Victoria picked up her purse. You have 24 hours to decide. File the papers and choose love or spend the rest of your life knowing you sacrificed the only real thing you've ever had for money you don't need. As she walked through the restaurant toward the exit, Victoria felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Freedom. The weight of pretending to be happy in a marriage, built on lies, was finally lifting from her shoulders. Outside the November air bit through her white dress, but she didn't feel cold. Oliver was waiting by the curb in his car, engine running. How did it go? He asked as she slid into the passenger seat. Victoria looked back at the restaurant one last time, seeing Sebastian and Elena through the window, holding each other as they cried. I think they'll be happy together. And you, will you be happy? Victoria smiled, and for the first time, in 2 years, it reached her eyes. I'm going to find out. 3 months later, Victoria stood in a small art gallery in Florence, Italy, watching tourists admire the paintings she had curated. The divorce had been finalized quietly, with no media attention and no $50 million she had taken. Only what was hers, and started over with nothing but her talent and her determination. Her phone buzzed with a text from Oliver. Thought you should know? Marcus inherited everything. Sebastian and Elena got married last week in a small ceremony. He's working as a junior executive at his cousin's company. Victoria smiled and turned off her phone. Outside her gallery, the Tuscan sun painted the world in gold and amber, and she had work to do. For the first time in her adult life, Victoria Sterling was exactly where she belonged. The end.